Walking a Rainbow, Chapter 3, Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, France. We walked through deserted, peaceful residential roads and uphill to the main street, a motley of hotels and bars and souvenir shops with the wooded mountains apparently just outside of town. The Pyrenees felt like a backdrop, something to make the town more pretty. It was a picturesque place, with old bridges over the docile river Nive, flanked by the white walls of the backs of houses, with wooden balconies and brown shutters. Our first task was to find somewhere to stay, and we were directed by the tourist office to the house of Madame Dubril, in the steep and cobbled Rue de la Citadelle. We knocked tentatively and were greeted by a formidable and crusty late middle-aged woman who admitted us reluctantly into her cluttered book-lined office. Here she grilled and humiliated us, and Kez turned off and went into screensaver mode. She disbelieved we were pilgrims, doubted our sincerity, plainly thought we were not serious and were merely disguised motorists. She tutted a great deal, sighed in dismissive disapproval, and ridiculed my limping French. "You are pilgrims?" she sneered sarcastically. "Yes," I replied submissively. She sniffed critically. "And walking?" "Yes." And so it went on. It was like something out of Kafka. We were plainly impostors and deeply guilty, though of what exactly was unclear. I had to argue and convince and justify, solve the riddle without knowing what it was. "Do you have a passport?" "Yes," and I awkwardly rummaged for my British passport. "Not that thing," she complained cuttingly. "Your pilgrim's passport." I'd heard of these. With this document you could get free or cheap accommodation all the way along. No, we'll get those in Roncesvalles." "No passport!" she spat, apparently scandalised. On and on it went for ages, with constant tutting, as if she was sucking a sweet. Eventually she filled out our details in a large ledger and took us to a refuge, our dormitory. It was further up the hill. At long last, after searching the place for illicit intruders, she left to our relief. "What a cow," said Kez succinctly. Brooding over the experience, I came to a different view of this ordeal. "She's like a guardian of the way, I think, Kez. It's like a test of resolve. You have to pass muster. She's like the dog—" "Bitch," interrupted Kez. "The bitch, with eyes as big as saucers, or the Sphinx. Give the wrong answer and you're devoured on the spot or chucked off the mountain. She teaches humility." "She teaches resentment," said Kez, unconvinced. "Well, maybe, but there we were, thinking we were special, about to walk 500 miles, and she brought us down. She does that all right. Undermines the pride and makes you beg. A suitably humble attitude for pilgrims. She starts you off on the right foot." "She just likes insulting people," said Kez simply. Still, we dumped our rucksacks and went off to explore. There were lots of locals crossing the river and climbing a hill the other side. We followed an amateur band and found a Festival de Force Basque. In we went and sat around a simple sports field and watched short, burly men competing in trials of strength. It was like a primary school sports day solely for adult males. We watched races where they carried heavy sacks, wood chopping contests, a competition involving hauling bales of hay up on a pulley, and endless tug-of-war heats. There was no running or jumping whatsoever. The Olympics emerged from an essentially military tradition, a development of army training, a citizen's duty to ready themselves for the defence of their city. It can be useful in battle to be able to run and jump, throw your spear, wrestle. The ancient Greeks ran in their armour in the Olympics, held weights when jumping. But here in Saint-Jean was an alternative, a rural Olympics. You don't run and jump or wrestle or throw spears much on a farm. These agricultural athletes pulled and hefted, lifted and pushed, demonstrated their prowess in shifting awkward things about, like hay bales and farm carts. The finale involved lifting one end of a heavy cart and walking around in a circle with it. Muscles ruled here, and the emphasis was on efficient bulk and tensile sinew. Biceps bulged like marrows, and veins stood out like pods of runner beans. And the crowd of lesser men, plus maidens, potential wives, loved it. Afterwards we bought a bottle of wine, some bread, cheese and eggs, and took a quiet path by the riverside, past a pair of lovers, crossed a wooden footbridge and found a picnic site by the river. Backed by an ancient wall was a sloping half-moon of poor grass going down to a stony beach. Tall trees flanked the opposite bank, and the old pilgrims' church, Notre Dame du Bout du Pont, was downriver to our left. I opened the wine and put the bottle to cool in the river, boiled up the eggs on my trusty old stove, and we settled down to a slow and leisurely meal. The air felt exotically sultry, but spangled with the sound of the continuously variegated tinkling of running water. Fish jumped out beneath bankside shrubs and sank with a plop. A lacing lattice of swallows swooped low over the stream for the first few early evening gnats. "It's the early gnat that catches the bird, Kes," I observed, lazily pointing, relaxed, swigging cheap red wine out of my chipped enamel mug, laying back gloriously at my ease. "Still a bit hot though," I continued. "Ah," said Kes, raising one finger, I have something for the heat." He produced a small plastic fan like a fat sausage with propeller blades at one end. He raised it to his face and grinned. "Well, turn it on then." "It is on," said Kes. "Doesn't it work?" "Oh yes, it works." "It isn't working now?" No, not now." He moved his face around the fan as if receiving a cooling breeze. "Why doesn't it work now, Kes?" "No batteries." Well, put them in then." "Didn't bring any. Have to save weight, you said." He closed his eyes and enjoyed the imaginary cooling. "Let me get this right. You brought a portable fan to keep you cool, but left the batteries to save weight." "It's all in the mind, man," he said smugly. I cracked and peeled a hard-boiled egg, put the shell in a paper bag, spread the egg on some bread and bit deep. "What do you think of this pilgrimage lark, Kes? It's an adventure. Surely, but it's nothing more. You don't feel as if you were a pilgrim?" "No, do you?" "Yes." I paused to let my mind come up with some insight as to what I was doing here. I found only an amorphous feeling of confident expectation. "Have patience," it whispered. "Slow down and have a little patience." I'm here for a purpose, but I don't know what it is. Maybe with luck I'll find out why I'm doing it on the way." He nodded and drank his wine. Eventually we packed up and retraced our steps over the footbridge and past the lovers still sitting in an agonised tension of togetherness and separation to the old Pilgrim's Church. Just on the riverbank, with its south-west tower forming a gateway to the bridge, and the whole way it is a marker of an intention. The colour of the stone arrests and chills. It is a sombre, steely mauve, cold and serious. I went in and lit a candle just because it felt right, though I am neither Catholic nor Christian, and found myself suffused with an emotional ache of loss that seeped out in tears. My shoulders felt hunched and heavy, and I became convinced that something awful would happen. I shrugged off the mood as silly. On the way to the refuge we heard English voices from a crowd of a dozen or so outside the tourist office. They were being filmed by a Spanish television crew. A pretty young woman with frizzy red hair like a child's toy and tiny delicate hands, wearing a deep blue PVC anorak, one of the crew, explained to me that they were making a film of the way with a Spanish astrologer from Valencia as the principal figure. They were waiting for him to arrive. Angel, the director, a bustling, stocky man with constantly flickering bright eyes, asked me to stand amid the group and keep looking at my watch. I borrowed his watch and obliged while the camera rolled. Then the astrologer appeared. He was a tall, thin man, sun-browned, wearing a khaki shirt and shorts and sandals with no socks. He had a long pilgrim's staff and a black bushy beard. He wore a hat like a pith helmet, but of woven straw. He walked up with slow and measured strides, as if it were a meditation exercise. He stopped and posed for the camera, leaning on his staff with both hands. Then he took off his hat and wiped his brow. He was completely bald. What a prat, I thought. Kes, tired, turned in early. I updated my diary, studied our sketch maps for the next day, and took a glance at the one-page map of the whole route. A wriggling red line snaked across the whole width of northern Spain. 500 miles. More than twice the longest distance I'd ever walked in one go. Just walking, no more hitching now, walking every day. It didn't seem possible that we could do it. That night my parent alarm went off about 3 a.m. Kaz wasn't breathing properly. Thin little gasps of wheezy air came from his bunk. It didn't sound enough, and it was much too fast. I lay awake till dawn, listening, anxious. "Sleep all right last night?" I inquired, packing. "Yeah, why shouldn't I? Fine. Except for the cat." "What cat?" "The one that came and sat on my chest and fell asleep. Bloody thing snored all night."